Hi, welcome to another episode of Front Row. Here with me today is Paul Brenchley, a partner at the insurance advisory of KPMG at Singapore, who specializes in digital innovation in the insurance sector. So, Brenchley, when you do talk about innovation, a lot of people would associate innovation with the latest high-tech gadget. But the truth is, sectors such as insurance is moving towards and keeping up with innovations as technology moves forward. So what is driving the innovation in the insurance sector, and what could we expect the insurance sector to look like in the not so far future?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think what we've certainly seen is actually technology be the enabler, and it's really been the customer that have been driving some of the innovation changes that have appeared. So if you look at the way that customers currently interact with different businesses, like especially some of the technology companies, like Google, like Amazon, like Facebook, where a lot of it is very self-service and a lot of it is very instant gratification. I think that is actually driving the customer's expectations now of every single business that they actually interact with. I think in Singapore particularly, we've seen the banks start to lead some of those innovations. Everyone now banks online. I personally can't remember the last time I walked into a banking branch to do anything. So, you can call and you can speak to a chatbot 24/7. You can service your account online. Now, if you look at that from a financial services perspective, the insurance industry has lagged a fair way behind the banks and is rapidly playing catch up now. They are doing an awful lot of work to actually understand not only their current customer, but also their future customer. So, the millennial generation, the baby boomers, these are the individuals, the people that are actually online, looking at these sort of new tech companies and playing around. So the insurers are learning a lot from the experiences that those customers have and slowly trying to replicate it. It's a long process. Lots of them are hampered by legacy systems, historical issues, potentially even cultural changes and risk aversion in terms of wanting to adapt. But that's actually where they're trying to get to. So once a lot of them have mapped out some of those customer journeys, they're then actually looking at some of the technologies that they can use to bring in their businesses to actually start to deliver the customer experience that they're wanting to deliver. So, we've seen companies experimenting with blockchain, with AI, with chatbots, chatbots with sort of very powerful natural language processing abilities. So you can almost have a transactional bot as opposed to just an informational one. So actually you can start to engage and start to transact with a bot as opposed to an individual. So yeah, I think we've seen certainly the technology being the enabler, but the companies have looked at where they're trying to actually get to be able to deliver some of that experience.
Paul, you were telling about some of the experiences of the insurance sector in Singapore. How will this innovation affect a market like Sri Lanka? Because after all, Sri Lanka's insurance sector still has relatively low penetration in the population. Yeah. So how will this innovation affect a market like Sri Lanka?
I think in Singapore and in other more developing markets, I worked in the UK for 15 years, and I've seen Singapore's pace of change actually be a lot faster than I saw in the UK. I have a number of my colleagues come over from the UK and they're always amazed at some of the things that we're doing in Singapore. I think we've certainly seen the change in China, which has just made leaps and bounds in terms of progress. So, I'm quite close to the market in Indonesia, which again is seen as a market that is slightly less mature than Singapore and much less penetrated. There's a big belief there that there will be a big inflection point where these digital changes do start to take off. I think what companies are starting to do in markets like Indonesia is actually start to use digital tools to raise some of the awareness of their products. So through smartphone penetration is increasing all the time. A lot of companies are using that not necessarily as sales, but more as education. So particularly in insurance, we are seeing some companies start to develop up learning apps or other kind of marketing material online, which is starting to raise awareness not only of their product, but also the value of their product. So many people in Indonesia believe that the sort of social services, social security scheme will look after them. I think many insurers are saying, well, actually, it might do, but if you're going to be living till 90, 95, even 100, actually there's a big gap there that you need to start thinking about and saving now. So I think some of the digital technologies, particularly the smartphone adoption and the ease of being able to get to many, many customers, as opposed to someone having to walk around the countryside having face-to-face conversations, which is hugely time-consuming. So I think that's where we're starting to see in some of the more emerging markets, some of these technologies starting to be developed to actually just start to raise awareness of products and services. And I think that could equally apply across other sectors as well.
The Sri Lankan insurance market has seen a few global players moving in, and currently we do have a significantly large number of insurance actors in the insurance market. So with regards to innovation in innovative insurance sector, is it aided by having a large number of actors in the market, or is it aided by extensive consolidation of the insurance market?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think what we certainly started to see, from Singapore is, a lot of interest in markets like Sri Lanka. You talked about the lack of penetration of insurance, so it is seen as an exciting opportunity for many. And again, as you alluded to, a number of international players have made moves into the market. Very keen to get in at a reasonably early stage and get their presence. I think a lot of the innovation that we've seen to be more effective has been where industry players have actually looked to work together on common solutions. Now, if you have international players coming in, certainly they have experiences from headquarters or regional offices of areas where they've developed that have worked in other markets. So I'm hoping that they will certainly bring in maybe some new ideas, some product innovation, some channel innovation into the market. But I think insurance is in a way quite a sort of simple product. You have your new business, renewals, your claims, and your servicing. And actually, industry players sort of coming together to start to find solutions for industry issues, which tend to be fairly common across most of the players, is actually where I think you can get some of the greatest benefit. If I give you an example, in Singapore, a number of the banks have come together to actually develop up a KYC platform on blockchain. So if you go to one bank and you open a bank account, obviously you have a number of pieces of documentation that you actually have to give them. If you then go to a second bank and want a credit card, you have to give them the same documentation. So the idea is that the banks can then actually access this platform and wouldn't have to then ask you for that documentation for a second time. So there's benefit in that for all of them, but it does require a number of them, again, to come together, to work together. And that's been driven largely by some regulatory initiatives, but also by some of the associations. So I think some of the insurance associations or the banking associations, or even the likes of the sort of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, bringing industry players together to actually work on common industry solutions, I think is where some of the greatest innovation benefit could be derived.
Okay. So Paul has made us aware of a number of innovations that are happening in the insurance sector in a mature market like Singapore, and also how maturing markets like Indonesia and how those lessons can be applied to Sri Lanka in the future as well. So thank you, Paul, for being part of Front Row, and I invite you to continue to join us for another episode of Front Row in the future. Thank you.